Hello and welcome to another of our series of short conversations we term Bits and Bytes Live, where we talk to folks in the industry on topics of the day through the lens of the communication service provider. And this session in the month of MWC Americas, we're going to be looking at RAN and 5G technologies, which are incredibly topical. And to do that, I'm very pleased to say I'm joined by Ronny Haraldsvik, who is Senior Vice President of Business Development and Marketing at Cohere Technologies, and also welcoming back Stephen Spellicy, who is VP of Marketing within VMware's Telco Business Units. So welcome, gentlemen. I'm Nigel Stevenson. I'm Director of Market Development for the Telco BU here at VMware for Europe, Middle East and Africa. So with that out of the way, again, welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for taking the time to spend with us here. And we're going to look at the RAN, and we're going to look at in particular things like O-RAN and how we accelerate the deployment of O-RAN and similar technologies. So before we kick into that, I'll do what I usually do when we have a guest on here, Ronny. I'll ask you if you could just help position for us Cohere Technologies for people who may not be aware with the company and what you guys do and the sort of technology areas that you're involved in.
Absolutely. And, thank you for, having me, Nigel and Stephen. Appreciate that. So Cohere Technologies, we changed our company focus going back about 3.5 years ago from being focused on a very specific waveform, OTFS. Funny enough, it's getting a lot of attention now for 6G. But we focused on extracting out one of the crown jewels in that waveform, which is our channel model, which is a delayed Doppler-based channel model, which actually can take time and frequency and actually translate that into a geometric view of the channel. And we actually get a three-dimensional view into that channel, which actually gives us the ability to also slow down the channel and predict it. Now, why does that even matter? Well, what we ended up doing is creating a software that can sit on top of O-RAN as an XApp in near real-time RIC, i.e. VMware, or adjacent to the DU in a existing RAN configuration, and then do channel prediction in such a way that we have the ability to better predict the channel and frankly MU-MIMO enable with our software and do pinpoint beams to users so that the end result is actually a spectrum multiplier effect, better experience for not just TDD networks, but also FDD networks, and more importantly, for transmit, for receive, all the way up. So that actually is what brought us together with VMware, because of your focus on Open RAN and our focus on going to market in both inside of the Open RAN environment, as well as your standardization efforts and great support from VMware, but also being able to demonstrate the 2x spectrum multiplier effect, which we did actually together, Cohere and VMware with Vodafone in June 2021.
Okay, excellent and interesting. So you're very much at the sharp end or the far end, I guess you might say, in terms of literally helping control what is happening in the radio spectrum. So you're right at the edge of the network. But it's interesting, you also said there you can operate in different ways. So you could operate adjacent to the DU, but also as an XApp connecting or interfacing out in through a RIC, which presumably gives slightly more capabilities, expanded capabilities. And that, I think, is probably where I pass over to Stephen, because the RIC obviously is I guess, the main point of contact, as it were, between our two organizations. So Stephen, perhaps could you give a bit of a picture of how does the work that Ronny and Cohere are doing, how does that interwork with what VMware is doing in the context of what does that mean to a customer?
Sure. Beyond the fascinating technology and science, which there's a ton in this particular area of the mobile network. We share a worldview with what Cohere is trying to do. We're trying to effectively improve how the radio network is utilized and how it's operated. Right? This goes back to VMware's core tenets. To be able to get more resource out of a hardware resource. More actual usage out of a hardware resource. And so we share that worldview, and doing this in particular part of the network where more advanced instrumentation is required in order to improve the utilization of that resource or the quality of service of that resource. And so working with Cohere, obviously their technology is absolutely breakthrough. We believe in what they're doing. We're bringing that technology to a platform, which we call the RAN Intelligent Controller, which inserts in the radio access network and enables the operators to effectively control how they use the spectrum and how they use the radio resources. This is really beyond the technology. It's really down to dollars and cents. It's about getting more out of the resource that you've spent a lot of money on and a lot of time and will continue to spend a lot of money on as you operate it and deploy it into production. This technology and this partnership enable operators to gain greater efficiency, improved agility, and overall better quality of service ultimately to their subscribers. So it is game changing in my opinion. Beyond that, Cohere is an early adopter of our partner program for our RAN Intelligent Controller. They've integrated with us in our SDK program, which has been quite a fantastic partnership. It's helped us develop that platform, and it's also helped them better integrate their technology into that platform. So all in all, collaboration 100%, and what we believe Cohere and VMware can do in the market together is endless here at this point.
Excellent, thank you for that. And of course, I suppose this is an example of the innovation element of opening the RAN environment as a whole, right? So we're talking about some quite specific capabilities here, which I guess relate primarily to things like cost savings and quality of service. But there are other ways we can work with a broad ecosystem to bring the customer other advantages. But this is one example of innovation by opening up the network and being able to.
And Nigel, I think it's an important part here too, because what Stephen and I and others have worked together on, because this is kind of the synthesis behind why we started working so closely together, is that Open RAN started up as cost savings, open up the network, more variety of vendors. But then there was an aha moment from several of the operators, like the Deutsche Telekom and the Vodafones of the world, going, you know what? With the RIC and XApp and a variety of XApps, and there's the disaggregation of functions that are being moved further and further back into the cloud. It generates insights, and in our case, generates insights into the channel, and we can do more things with the channel, and therefore, spectral efficiency. But there is a ton of data. The data that can then be used in the cloud, mined, and frankly open up for new services and functions that hadn't otherwise been possible in a closed network in the RAN. So Open RAN changed to becoming, wow, this is actually becoming an innovation platform, and the RIC is essential to that. I think VMware is the only one who's openly, maybe next to Rakuten, talking about creating an app world that gives the operators the ability to sort of pick and choose. Of course, it's going to take some time before we get there, but being able to do new things in a network that otherwise couldn't have been done, it wasn't even possible before. And this is the path to, as we go from 4G to 5G to 6G, it's all going to be about the cloud.
Excellent, very good point. And I'll stick with you, Ronny, if I may, because I know there's been a number of collaborations and work that with both companies have been involved in with customers. But can you put a bit of meat on the bone, I suppose, in terms of, you've talked about the technology, the spectrum savings, and so on. What experiences have we had collectively, individually, working with communication service providers? And I guess what I'm getting at is how real is this?
Well, it started actually 2 years ago, prior to MWC in Barcelona, and as a quick reminder for everyone, that event just a few weeks before ended up being canceled. But at that time, VMware and Cohere was already collaborating to show a demo with Deutsche Telekom in their booth at MWC in Barcelona. And we fast and furiously changed all of our focus to bring that into the courtyard at their HQ. And, that was our first 4G work together. And, let's just say that, if it hadn't been for the fact that we were a startup and there were actually people inside of VMware that came from a previous startup, Ohana, we wouldn't have been able to pull this together in this rapid amount of time, because frankly, what was done was impossible, but we did it. And we showcased over 4G, live network, over, 1800 megahertz spectrum, 5 megahertz spectrum, how we can double spectral efficiency for 2 iPhones. And that was the beginning of a great relationship between us and VMware. Ultimately, VMware ended up putting funding into the company. We started collaborating on customers. Vodafone was one of them. That led to us working together on 5G, TDD, and showcasing that. And actually, it's led to more work and coordination in other operators that publicly not known, and I wouldn't necessarily want to disclose them. But we are indeed working together in many different accounts, both on 4G as well as 5G.
Interesting point. Yeah. So this technology is not, genuinely is not just futures, right? We can take elements of this and we can incorporate it into existing deployments. We're not saying that all of this has to wait any length of time, although the future benefit and the aspirations might be down the line a little way, but there's some real world things that can be done today.
Yeah, and just to give a little bit of a plug for VMware, we have taken the lead on several accounts, but on other accounts, VMware's taken the lead and brought us in. So it's a very good, cooperative relationship together. So I appreciate that.
Stephen, any thoughts from yourself on how you're seeing the market evolving and the I guess the status of the industry in terms of adopting these sort of technologies?
Well, I'd say that 5G is real, and obviously Open RAN is real. We've seen some great examples of progress by some of the largest operators in the world who are in early phase deployment of Open RAN, which I think is very promising. And they, for all the reasons we discussed before, it's economics, it's agility, it's even improved in some ways technology approach to new use cases. But they, as they move forward, what they're finding is this new network, the new radio and the new network that they're deploying, they opened up new opportunities. As Ronny said, being able to instrument data collection at this layer and then be able to mine that data and use that data for the purpose of monetization or improve quality of service or quality of assurance, those kinds of things. This is what these operators aim to do. And they are looking at these investments as they build these new networks, but they're also looking backwards. They're looking at their existing 4G infrastructure and saying, what can I do? How can I apply some of these applications in this construct of a RIC and actually leverage the existing network and some of the existing infrastructure? I think that's what's very exciting. And, as we start working with customers, and we've been public about a few of them, I'll just name, we announced a trial at Dish. We announced a very public trial at Vodafone. The results are coming in, and these operators are very satisfied with what they're seeing as they experiment with these technologies. If I'm an operator and I've spent a lot of money in a spectrum auction, and I've spent a lot of money on planning and deploying and developing that new network, I want to make sure I get every dollar out of that network, and that, I can drive higher ARPU. Well, one aspect of that is, look, I've paid all this money. I've spent all this money to build this new network. That's sunk, right? I need to make money off of that network. We don't build networks for the sake of just building faster, better networks. We build them so we can monetize them and actually drive higher levels of ARPU. At this point in time, this is early stage, right? But these technologies that we're talking about today enable the operators to not only make more money as they aim to do, but also they can actually optimize the investment that they've already made, which I think is phenomenal. You can get, in one case, we have an operator who's seen 2x the amount of spectral saving based on the Cohere and VMware collaboration. I think this is phenomenal for the operators. They can save money, and then they can use the data from the technology platform to make money. It's quite unique, I think, in its approach in the market, and it's real. We've seen this across a dozen accounts right now that we're currently working with, who are in early stage POCs or pilots with our RIC platform.
Excellent. I just gonna got a question come in from Rami. If one of you want to pick this one up first, it's just asking if there are any startup ecosystems, I guess, in the O-RAN space. So how, I suppose the question more generally is how is the ecosystem forming? What does it look like? Is there a place to go visit it? Can either of you shed some light on how the ecosystem is developing and where people might be able to look for it?
You know, in the words of Winston Churchill, I can promise nothing but blood, sweat, and tears. But having said that, you know, we have to give kudos to the Vodafones of the world and you know, Facebook, Tip, Meta, that is trying to actually create that and make it easier, because you know, as a startup, you know, going direct to the operators, you know, you have to, in essence, you know, fight in the trenches trying to get around the existing vendors that are there. And, you know, there's not going to be a wish for any of them to bring you in until you can actually prove to an operator that what you have is something that's unique and different. At that point in time, you get a lot of attention. Either A, they're going to love you to death, or they're going to try to kill you. You know, and I speak for some the experience I have in the last 25 years, you know, working with a variety of startups in this space. And there's a reason why I'm bold, Nigel. You know, I'm not sure what your reason is, but you know, there's a reason why I'm bold. But you know, there is no one magical place where you can go and you know, sort of sign up the ecosystem. But you know, work through the Open RAN Alliance, work through TIP, get involved with the, you know, Open RAN policy, you know, coalition, the ORPC, so forth. That's going to help. And if you're lucky, you'll end up with a partner like VMware.
I would just add to that, you know, those are the places where this milieu is forming around Open RAN. We are, you know, both Cohere and VMware are actively involved in those communities. We're, you know, we're involved in the Plug Fest associated with Open RAN, being able to exhibit with operators to be able to experiment and prove the value of these technologies. In addition, there's a commercial marketplace that exists today, which is, you know, trying to deliver a 5G radio, 5G RAN software, a variety of other related technologies that are going to flesh out the Open RAN ecosystem. You can see some of these and you can hear about some of these related to this topic or on the RIC on our telco.vmware.com microsite. We've got some great partners, and some are in collaboration with Cohere, which are effectively adding additional capabilities in the same sort of general area of the network. But think of this as sort of apps on an iPhone, right? You know, you've got an app that does one purpose, and then you have another app that does another. The RIC is meant to be that platform in which you can run these multiple apps for different reasons. And we're in the case of Cohere, we're talking about spectral efficiency and spectral multiplication. In the case of, say, geolocation or precise precision, we're looking positioning rather. We're looking at we're partnered with a company called Pulte as an example. You'll see this on our website. There are a host of these, I would say, disruptive startups like Cohere that are really kind of pushing the envelope. They're actually they're really, you know, driving this part of the industry. They're at the head and the lead of the pack, you know, and this is a huge opportunity for operators. So if you don't know what's going on in the RIC space, get to know it, because it is the next sort of, you know, frontier, if you will, of how we're going to deploy, manage, and operate RAN moving forward.
Excellent. And certainly, I mean, O-RAN Alliance and TIP, Telecom Infra Project, I know too that we both sort of contribute and involved in. There's, for those people who are in the Europe sort of area or willing to travel further, I know they've got their summits happening next month, I believe, in Madrid. So there's a gathering there that people can attend, covering both O-RAN Alliance and TIP. And I think those are two organizations that are starting to work very closely together. They have slightly different nuances, I think, in what they focus on achieving, but collectively that certainly is helping driving the industry forward. So yeah, good tips, may I say there. So I think we're not doing too bad on time, but we need to sort of wrap up pretty quickly. So I'll throw out a final question, I think, which is, and actually this resonates with something I've heard you say, Ronny, earlier or in other conversations, that let me put the analyst perspective. I think most analysts are saying that when they're looking at O-RAN specifically. And I think there are multiple aspects on the journey which we've covered. But when they're looking at O-RAN, they're saying this is a market that they expect to kick off probably in something like 2025 or so. Now, Ronny, I happen to know that you think it might be slightly closer than that. So I was just wondering what your perspectives are in terms of the sort of more mainstream adoption of this technology. How do you see that panning out?
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with the analysts about 2025 per se, but there's a ramp up period. One of it's going to actually have a significant impact if it's 20 or 30% impact on the networks. It is likely 3 to 4 years away. But our adoption of O-RAN is already taking place. Companies like Mavenir, Nokia, Fujitsu, and others. It's already happening. The penetration of the RIC into those networks, that's essential. Because that will pull through other vendors and so forth. So but we're already seeing some small commercial deployments. I think you're gonna it's already done on 4G with Rakuten among others. Mavenir, Dish, VMware. So I would say we're going to be in a ramp up period. Do I believe there's going to be a hockey stick where O-RAN overtakes the existing RAN? No. Is there going to be a happy coexistence for the next 10, 15 years? Absolutely.
Stephen, anything to add?
Yeah, I think I'll add to that point, which is to say you can start now. I mean, what we've been discussing today is we'll call backwards compatible, right? The use cases that Ronny mentioned earlier can be achieved in the existing network on 4G. And I think customers want to start reaping the benefits of having precise data around their RAN behavior and being able to make gains in efficiency. They can do that today, and they can do that with Cohere, and they can do that alongside with VMware supporting them. This is an opportunity to start investigating now and starting getting more value out of the assets you've already purchased, out of the already deployed. As you look forward to deploy the 5G network, the network of your future, you need to be thinking forward about how you get more value out of that asset and how you drive more future ARPU from your subscribers. And I think you can start today and you can carry that forward into 5G and beyond.
Excellent.
I'll make it one final caveat on our 2x claim, because we've seen 4x, but 2x, those are in good condition, SNR and so forth. Metro, rural, urban, all depending on the scenario. But as Stephen and I talked privately about, even if we do 50%, it is massive, and we will do that, with Stephen, because we're talking about a $1 trillion market invested in spectrum and so forth. Last 20 years alone, it's over $500 billion in buying spectrum. So if we can, VMware and Cohere can just add a little bit of value to that, that is massive.
Indeed. And I'll just final thought from myself, if I may be so bold, is I think picking up on one of your comments there, Stephen, and the fact that this is a technology you can start to work with now to real benefit. But one of the benefits we haven't talked about, and to some degree it's an elephant in the room, I guess, is the skills around this as well. Yeah, we're talking about bringing on board new skills. First of all, in the concept of using something like a RIC, but also behind that, you've got the concept of distributed clouds, you've got edge networks and so on. So there is the other value, I guess, of starting now is that you're also starting that skills journey as well. So you're preparing the organization, you're learning about the technologies, but there's a benefit. You can actually get some rewards back from that as you go along that journey.
Yeah, and Saeed, excuse me, Nigel, if I can give you a little bit of plug to Dish here, because on the Open RAN Forum Alliance webinar yesterday, Saeed Berahil from Dish, he said something very profound. They are hiring a ton of data scientists, not RAN experts, but data scientists, because the treasure trove of data that they're getting access to is what's going to be the key difference here. And being able to deploy new services in a matter of hours and days rather than 4 times a year, which is sort of like or 2 times a year, which is kind of what you do in the existing RAN. That is just profound. And so the future is cloud, and I think VMware is well positioned.
Okay, excellent. Great way to end it. I will leave it at that. It's a fascinating conversation. Thank you both very much for taking part. If people want to get in touch with you, I think I'm right in saying probably the best way is just contact you over LinkedIn. Both of our organizations will have speakers at MWC in Las Vegas. So that's another opportunity. There'll be people around there if people want to try and reach out. But yeah, LinkedIn is probably the easiest way, just to ping you guys a note, or myself, and we'll pick people up. Excellent. Well, thank you very much once again, and yeah, until the next time, thanks very much. Goodbye, everybody.
All right, take care.
Cheers.
Thanks.